In this video and the next ones, we are going to implement a user-friendly password reset functionality, which is kind of standard in most web applications. And probably you have used the password reset on some website before. And usually it works like this. You just have to provide your email address and you will then get an email with a link where you can click, and then that's going to take you to a page where you can put in a new password. And this is a very standard procedure, and so this is also how we're going to implement it here in this application. So basically there are two steps. So the first one is that the user sends a post request to a forgot password route only with his email address. And this will then create a reset token and send that to the email address that was provided. So just a simple random token, not a JSON web token. So that's a difference here. Then in the second part, which is going to be the next video, the user then sends that token from his email along with a new password in order to update his password. All right. So basically we will have exports.forgotPassword, which is the first step. So request, response, and next. And then as a second step, we have reset password. All right. Then let's also go ahead and implement these two routes. Okay. And that's of course in the user router or user routes file. Okay. And so let's put them also right up here. And actually I can just duplicate these lines here. Okay. So we have again forgot password, which will only receive the email address, and then reset password, which will receive the token as well as the new password. All right. So this is the one that we're going to start implementing in this lecture. And so let's, just like before, specify our steps here. So first, get user based on posted email, then generate the random token, and then basically send it back as an email. All right, so this stuff is pretty common for us at this point. So user, so let's await user.find, and now it's find one. Okay, not find by ID, because we don't know the user's ID. And the user, of course, also doesn't know his own ID. And so we specify the email address. So basically, as the only piece of data that is known. And so that is then on request.body.email address. All right. And of course, now we need to say that we're in an async function. And then just like before, let's wrap it in catch async. Give it a save, and the error should be gone. All right. Then next up, let's verify if the user does exist. So if no user, then return to the next middleware, along, of course, with a new error. Is no user with that email address. And then we can put a 404, which, as you already know, means not found. Okay, next up, let's then generate the random token. And for that, once more, we're actually going to create an instant method on the user. Okay, because once more, this really has to do with the user data itself. All right, and we're going to write a bit of code really. And so if it was only one line of code, then of course we could just put it right here. But we need a couple of lines of code, and so again, it's a bit cleaner to separate it into its own function. And that usually with Mongoose is best as an instance method. So down here, let's just add it here at the end. So user schema dot methods dot create password reset token. So quite a long and descriptive name, I like to do it like that, so that I know exactly what I'm dealing with. All right? Okay, so the password reset token should basically be a random string, but at the same time, it doesn't need to be as cryptographically strong as the password hash that we created before. Okay, so we can just use the very simple random bytes function from the built-in crypto module. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually add that. So crypto require, and again, it is a built-in a node module, and so no need to install anything. Cool. Now, let's then actually generate our token. And for that, we use crypto.randomBytes. All right. And then here we need to specify the number of characters, basically. Okay. And then we also, in the end, convert it to a hexadecimal string. Okay. So to string. And then we can specify the hex option here. Okay. Now, if you're wondering why we are actually creating this token, I guess I didn't really explain it just yet. So basically this token is what we're going to send to the user. And so it's like a reset password really that the user can then use to create a new real password. And of course, only the user will have access to this token. And so in fact, it really behaves kind of like a password. And so since essentially it is just a password, it means that if a hacker can get access to our database, well, then that's going to allow the hacker to gain access to the account by setting a new password, right? So again, if we would just simply store this reset token in our database now, then if some attacker gains access to the database, they could then use that token and create a new password using that token instead of you doing it. And so they would then effectively control your account instead of you doing it. Okay? And so just like a password, we should never store a plain reset token in the database. Okay? And so let's actually encrypt it. But such as before with the password, it doesn't need such a cryptographically strong encryption method. All right? Because these reset tokens are a way less dangerous attack vector. All right? And so again, we're just going to use the built-in crypto module. Okay? And so it works in this kind of weird looking way. So we say crypto, then create hash with the SHA-256 algorithm. Then we need to say update, and then the variable where the token is stored. So whatever string we want to encrypt, basically. And then we need to say digest, and then again store it as a hexadecimal. All right. And now, where are we actually going to save this reset token? Well, we're going to create a new field in our database schema. Okay. Because of course, we want to save it in the database so that we can then compare it with the token that the user provides. All right. So let's do that here at the end. Password reset token. That's a string. And then also password reset expires. Okay, because this reset will actually expire after a certain amount of time, again as a security measure. So you will only have like 10 minutes in order to actually reset your password. Okay, so let's now go ahead and use these. So this dot password reset token is then equal to this encryption. All right. Next up, let's then set password reset expires, and let's set that to date.now, and then simply add a couple of seconds to that. Okay, so we want it to work for 10 minutes. Okay, and so that's 10, and then we need it in milliseconds. Times 60 for seconds, and then times 1000 for milliseconds. All right. And then I also want to return the plain text token because that's actually the one that we're going to send through the email. Okay, so return reset token. Okay, so of course we need to send via email the unencrypted reset token, because otherwise it wouldn't make much sense to encrypt it at all, right? So if the token that was in the database was the exact same that we could use to actually change the password, well, then there wouldn't be any encryption at all, right? And so we send one token via email, and then we have the encrypted version in our database. And that encrypted one is then basically useless to change the password. So it's just like when we're saving only the encrypted password itself to the database. So just like we did up here, right? So where we encrypted the password, we're using bcrypt, right? So again, keep in mind that we only ever save sensitive data in an encrypted form. And then, of course, compare it with the encrypted version that's in the database. All right, let's just log these two to the console. That will make our lives a bit easier down the road. So let's say reset token, and I'm logging it here as an object because this way it will then actually tell me the variable name along with its value, basically, okay. And then the same with this .password reset token. And well, this one doesn't really work with writing object this new ES6 way, and so let's just leave it at this. Okay. Anyway, let's just come back here and then use that function. So remember how we returned the reset token, and so let's store that here. So reset token is equal to user dot set, and I'm not sure of the name anymore. So create password reset token. So that's a long one. All right. And so that is done. But actually what we did was just to modify the data in here. Okay. So when we set this .password expires, for example, to this value, we did in fact not really update the document. We did not save it. All right. So we really just modify it. But now we then need to save it. Okay. So let's say await user.save. Okay. But watch what happens as we now use this. So let's just grab this one here. Right. So this is the route that we defined before. And now we get this route is not yet defined. Let's see why that is. So in the user route, we clearly have the same URL here. But I see that we actually need to do a post request. All right. Okay, but now we get an error saying, please provide email and password. And so that's what I meant when I said, watch what happens when we try this. Okay. So that happens, of course, because we're trying to save a document, but we do not specify all of the mandatory data. So the fields that we marked as required. Okay. And so let's quickly fix that. And so all we need to do is to actually pass a special option into this user.save method. So we say validate before save set to false. Okay, and so this will then deactivate all the validators that we specified in our schema. All right, so it's these small things that you need to know that will make all the difference. Okay, now I also didn't actually know that this existed because no one really knows all of this stuff. It's impossible. A library like Mongoose is simply way too big for you to know everything there is. Okay, and so I went ahead and read the Mongoose documentation. And so that's where I found this extremely helpful option. So all of this just to say that, again, no one knows everything. And so it's really a good habit to, if you run into some problems, to take a look at the documentation for the library that you're using. So let's take a look at this now. And we still get the same error here. But I see down here that it's actually coming from the login function. So let's take a look at what's going on here. Let's take a look at the routes also. Okay, so here's the problem. Of course, we are now trying to call the login handler, which of course doesn't make sense. So here it's forgot password, here it's reset password. Okay, and so that error that we got before was actually not because of the validation. All right, so let's send this again. And now we get the error that there is no user with this email address. And so that's because, of course, we didn't specify any email address in the body. Okay, so we tested that. And so now it's time to actually test it with a user email. All right. And so now it shouldn't actually do anything because we're not sending back any response. So let's just cancel this, because all I was really interested in is to see these tokens here and then also to take a look at the user object. So this here is the original reset token. And so you see it's a random hexadecimal string, and then we got the encrypted one in here. Okay, and so this, remember, is the one that should now be in the database. So ending in A901. So let's take a look at that. And indeed, here it is. So password reset token ending in this A901. Okay, and also the date, which is in fact 10 minutes from now. So now you know at what time I'm recording this video. Okay, anyway, but this worked just fine. And so this is actually the first part of creating this password reset functionality. So in the next video, we will then send this token here via email to the user. And so I actually prepared a separate video only for learning how to actually send email with Node.js. So that's a very fun one. And so don't wait to move there right away.